Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. In this video, I'm going to talk about drawer making. The secret to a really well-fitting drawer actually starts with the drawer back. That's what I'm going to focus on. Stay with me. I'll teach you how. I'm Rob Cosman, and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help you take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, be sure to subscribe. Turn on that notification bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification on your mobile device so you'll know every time we release a new video. Good? All right, back to the bench. I'm surrounded by drawers. In fact, if you were to look in my house or in my shop, you couldn't turn your head more than 5 degrees without seeing another set of drawers. Well, what I like about it so much is the opportunity to really execute perfect fit. And perfect fit has to be explained, but it means that you can close that drawer by just pushing in on the bottom corner. Nothing binds. It floats on a cushion of air. It's just a ton of fun to do. In this video, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the actual drawer back, because if you want to get that fit where there is no side-to-side slop, it all starts with the drawer back, which is probably the least special piece of wood in terms of species, but I'm going to walk you through all of that. Just know we're starting at the back. I just want to go over the drawer parts with you. There's 5 pieces: drawer front, drawer back, drawer sides, drawer bottom. I'll talk about each of them just for a moment. The drawer front is probably going to be the most important part. This is the part that you've carefully matched the grain or the color or both. If you look over here on this bank of drawers, these pieces of wood were carefully matched so that the grain would flow from one to the other. You can see how it does it right here. Well, that's all been labeled. So I'm working on drawer number 3. And there's a big triangle on there that it's hard to see, but this comes right after that one. So when they're all done, again, it'll flow nicely top to bottom. What that means is I can't afford to screw that up. It's the only one I have, and I'm going to lose the whole sequence if something happens. So this, ultimately important. Drawer back, probably least important. Made out of what we would call secondary wood. We refer to this as primary. This is secondary. In this case, it's aspen. If I screw this up, I can easily go get another one. No one will ever know the difference. Drawer sides, again, made out of secondary wood. As a quick note, this start is a much thicker piece of lumber. I never take a thick piece and split it in half to try to get 2 pieces. You're almost guaranteed to get 2 unstable pieces. So I take 1 piece, starting with 4/4, which is 1 inch wood, and remove the same amount from both sides. Take the center, in this case, looks to be about 7/16 of an inch in thickness. That's going to give you your best part, or your best chance of getting a stable piece of wood. And I actually, when I do this, I would take it down maybe to 5/8, let it sit like that or stickered. And then I would, before I'm actually ready to start working the drawer, I'll mill it down to final size. And again, hopefully you're going to end up with stable pieces. So those are the 2. And then the drawer bottom. I prefer to do my drawer bottoms out of solid wood. This is a piece of Baltic birch plywood. It's going into a cabinet that's going to get a fair bit of abuse in terms of what's thrown in and out of there. So those are the 5 parts. Now, onto the drawer back. Okay, focus is on the drawer back. Now, typically, the drawer back is going to be narrower than the sides for 2 reasons. Number 1, if it's flush with the top of the sides, when you open the drawer, once it gets past that tipping point, because you always have to have a little bit of room this way for seasonal expansion, as it tips, you don't want this dragging along the underside of the case, which is going to make for some squeaky noises. Not going to fit very nicely. So it's going to be narrower because of that. And I usually only set it down there maybe a strong 1/16 of an inch. I like to have that cushion of air, so as long as that's fairly close to the top, that'll work. It's also going to be narrower because the bottom, the way I prefer to do it, as taught by Alan Peters, the bottom slides underneath the drawer back into the groove. So ultimately we have a groove on the side, the front, and the opposite side. The drawer bottom slides in there and is secured to the underside of the drawer back. Now, having said that, I'm going to start with the drawer wider than finished size, because I'm going to use it as my template for the drawer front. So I'm going to make this drawer back fit that opening perfectly. If I screw up, I'll start over. And I want to be able to then take that and transfer that onto my drawer front. So the closer it is to the actual full size, the better. Once I've done that, I'll cut it down to size. Now I'm going to look at this and decide which side looks better. Yeah, there's a bit of a knot there. I'll put that on the back. So this will be my top right. So that's going to go on that side. So I always identify it based on I'm looking at it in the closed position. And because it's number 3, I'm going to put 3 on there as well. Now next task is to get that bottom straight and square. If it's small enough or short enough, I'll use my shooting board. Otherwise, I'll either use a longer shooting board or I'll just put it in the vise and plane it. Okay, that's better. All right, at this point, I've now got to fit it to the opening. And this is the part that where you have to start to be really particular. That's how it's going to sit in the opening. But because of the style of this drawer, whereas the bottom lip of the top drawer hides the divider, I can't do this the normal way. So I made just a sacrificial piece, and I don't want to rely on this to be absolutely straight. There's a good chance that it's not. So instead of having my drawer sitting on a bump, I've designed this so I've got a little bit of a relief between about a half an inch away from either end. So when I set that on there, I'm relying on where this comes out just less than an inch from either side, which should keep me from having any kind of a bump interfere. But my first task is to get this to fit snug up against there. And to make sure it's snug, I'll use a piece of shim. This is 1.5 thou. Put it in there and push. Now if I can move it like that, then I know it's not tight. If I go up to the top, it is tight. Tight in the middle, loose at the bottom. Means I've got to take a little bit off of this end. So just taking a little pass off of the bottom, flipped it over. I'm going to ignore the fence, and I'm just going to use the sole of the plane. Now, I know I've got to remove a little bit of this, so I'm going to tip this away, which opens up a little bit of a gap right there. And then hold it firmly. Now I made it straight. I can see how tight it is against the end of the plane, at the bottom of the plane. Come back over here. Okay, let's check this again. Keep that in line. Push it over tight. It looks good. Now I'm going to check it like this. That's tight. That's tight. That's tight. Okay, I've got to keep this straight. That's how it is. That's my right side. This is how the drawer back fits in. My bottom is going to be my reference. Now, rather than try to rely on that to just hold on to it and feel that it's flush, I'm going to set that on a surface that I know to be flat. I'm going to use my table saw. And then okay, hold those both down firmly. Now, I'll extend that with a straight edge. I've got a special plane blade that I've never put a back bevel on, so that is flat, just like a chisel. And I'm going to put that in that scored line and then use it to align that straight edge. And then I can just simply come in and finish that. Hey, if you like this video, we have more. Our newsletter has subscriber-only content, monthly discount on tools, and anything we bring out that's new, subscribers get first crack at it. Click on the link below. Let's get back to work. Now, I'm just going to carry this over so that I can come in. I want to cut a chamfer on this side so the fibers don't tear. Do you see how these fibers start to break out as you get close to the line? Now I can tell that that scored line is not parallel or it's not square. It doesn't matter. I'm more concerned about fitting it to the opening. So I'm going to pull that away from the fence a little bit. Also going to pull my blade back in so I'm taking off a smaller bite. Not that small. If you look real close, there's obviously a gap, and that's those little short fibers from the knife line to the end of the board that break away quite rapidly. And until that pulls up nice and tight, I know I'm not where I need to be. So I'm going to get a little bit closer to the fence out here in this end. Okay, I'm going to try that. Okay, line these up, put them on a known flat surface. And you can feel well better than 1/1000th of an inch with your finger, so that lines up perfectly. Now the next thing to do is to fit it to the other side. And this is where you have to often get creative, because I've got to be able to put that in there, referencing off of the bottom normally, and then use the other side as the reference. So I'll show you what I mean. If I was doing a drawer for right here, what I would do after I've already made sure that this side fits this end fits this side perfectly, I'd lay it in there in the bottom. I'd reach around with the back out. I've got a blade that is flat on the back, and I would carefully mark top to bottom, score a line on there that would line up perfectly with the inside, and then it would be just a matter of shooting it on the shooting board until it fit. But the problem here is this divider is set back in, so I can't get access to it, or at least I can't accurately set this down on this divider that it's going to rest on. But I know that I've made it so that this fits up against here perfectly. So the way I'm going to do this, I took the cutter, the round cutter, off of one of my marking gauges. I'm going to put this in position. So this should be right about at the top. I got to hold this carefully. I could actually come in here and take that drawer out, and I could have clamped it, but I think I can hold it. Hold that where it needs to be. Now that doesn't move up and down because there's enough reference surface here to keep this held tightly. Now I've got to reach in there, and what I'm going to do is take that cutter, lay it against the back, and scribe the back side of this, referencing off of the side of the cabinet. Now I won't be able to go all the way up, but at least I'll get a mark top and bottom. So with that firmly pressed against the other side, I'll see if I can get up in there and mark that. If it's good and sharp, it should give me a mark I can see. Now, I'm going to switch hands. I want this to be out quite a bit because I want to be as close to exact as I can get. Reach down. Okay. Now let's take this over. Now this is the part where you just have to go slow and be careful until you get to, what I want to do first is I want to get the end of this board parallel to that line. And at that point, I'll get it parallel and then I'll start checking it, because it may end up being that I don't want to be right on that line. Sometimes just the fact that you had to put the back in on a bit of an angle in order for it to register means that line is actually going to be a little bit longer than it should. But we'll get it. Now at this point, I'm going to try checking that. So I'll go check top and bottom. Now that top is just starting to fit, but the bottom isn't, so I'll avoid that. Angle this a little bit more. and you've got a little bit of a radius right here, so you know that'll help ease it in a little bit. I can get the top to fit, but not the bottom, so still more material to come off of the bottom. So what I'm going to do is line this end up against my plane, and I can see what angle I have back here, so I'm going to pull this out a little bit more, which will allow me to take more off of the bottom without touching the top. Okay. That takes the same amount of pressure to push in from the top as it does the bottom. Now that's not what I'm going to ultimately want, but that's close enough that I know all I have to do once I assemble it is I'll just have to take off a few extra passes. But the fact that it takes the same amount of pressure to push it in on the top as it does the bottom, then I know even though this is a little bit long, at least this cut edge is parallel to that when it's referencing off of the bottom. How do I know? I didn't reference it off the bottom, but I referenced my test piece off the bottom to get it to fit against here. So when I put this against here, I know that this bottom will line up with that bottom. Now at this stage, so the front's done in terms of I've planed the inside, that's finished. I've planed the bottom edge. But you'll notice that when this goes in, the top edge is going to sit under here, and the bottom edge is going to go to the underside of the divider. I just shaped this to fit right here, which is approximately 5/8 of an inch above that bottom section. So if we want to get this right, what we need to do is lay this down. This is the top right corner. That's the top right corner, so that would be like this in the drawer. We're going to set it right here. But I need to get a filler piece in here that will put this up into the spot where it actually is going to belong, just in case there was any kind of a slight difference. So that okay, so there's my filler piece, and this is the exact thickness, well, approximately the exact thickness as that. So I'll put that in place, keep it just inside the end, and then I want that to be flush with the bottom. And I trust my thumbs more than I would any other method of doing that. That's in position. I hold that firmly. This is where I'm using my knife with my plane blade with no back bevel, which gives me lots of surface area to reference against the end. I can actually come up here, which this is a little bit taller, but I can reach out there, and then I'll use the corner, which is a lot easier to mark with than trying to lay it flat. And same thing down here. Do that again. All the pressure's on the front part, referencing against the end of the back. Hold that firmly. Okay. That mark could have been a little bit deeper, but I can see it. Now, shooting board, plane down to those lines, and then I'll check it. My back will then be this exact same size as the front. Now, before we cut this to fit, because you really remember, when that goes in, it has to come down from the top a little bit so it doesn't scrape, and it has to come up off the bottom enough that we can slide the actual drawer bottom underneath it. But I want to have that full length when it comes to laying out the dovetail, and I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, so here are the parts. Now I've gone ahead and done a lot of this, so I want to show you why we don't cut this to size until the very last. So here's my drawer back. This is exactly how it sits in there. So I'll put this in the vise, get it flush with the top of my plane. Now, in order to use our technique using the Sean shim, we have to have this full size, or if not full size, at least it has to come and be flush with one end or one edge. So in this case, I'm using the bottom. I'll eventually cut this piece off, but for right now, I can use these like so, and using the Sean shim and the 24th thou offset, I'll go in there and push that to my right. Now, this gets a little confusing, so I always like to go in, and I'm going to I'm going to put a T with a circle that represents tail. So there are the 3 tails, but I also have to treat this like a tail. So you have tail, pin, tail, pin, tail, pin, tail, pin, tail. So by labeling those, it makes it a lot easier to remember where I need to be marking. So in this case, I just offset what would be my tailboard to my right. So I'm going to go to the left side of each tail. I don't need to worry about this one, but I do need to worry about this one. So I'll go in there. Now you got to remember, I'm using that masking tape that I create a little masking tape wall, and that enables me to line these 2 pieces up exactly. So when we do this, we get our marks right where we want them. Okay, now it's just a matter of going and finishing the cuts. At this point, I can cut off the bottom. Now I'm going to cut close to the line. I'll dial that in with my plane, but I'll get rid of the bulk of it right here. And I'll take just a little bit off of the top. And then we can clean up both of those cuts with the plane. I need to cut this shoulder off the top. So I'll just rescribe that. Make it a little deeper. Anytime you make those shoulder cuts, it pays to come in and create that little wall. Okay, now I just have to remove the waste on the 2 drawer sides, and we'll be ready to assemble. So I'll show you how the drawer... So once assembled, the bottom of the drawer back fits right above the groove that houses the drawer bottom. Now I've got what are called drawer slips on here, and we'll do a video on that at some point in the future, but similar idea, only if you didn't have the slips, the groove would be on the drawer side. I'm using a plywood drawer bottom in this case, so it doesn't matter that there's no expansion room, you don't need that. 3 screws, nicely spaced, into the bottom. I would glue the drawer bottom into that groove in the drawer front. And once this is all put together, you'll get a nice solid drawer, no racking, nice and neat. There you go. If you enjoy my method of work and like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the plane and chisel icon below, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our in-person and online workshops.